Hey everybody, welcome back to the Compulang podcast. My name is Jacob and this is the episode for the 25th of October 2020. Joining me today yet again is my good friend Troy.
Hey, howdy.
And let's just jump right into it. So, first up, if you're an avid watcher of YouTube, you probably have heard the name Quibi on a number of advertisements over the past couple of months, and some big news came out about that company recently, that they're actually going to be shutting down. They released an open letter to their investors and supporters about offering some reasons for the failure and why they have to shut down. But I mean, to a lot of people, this came as no surprise. There was just not a lot of engagement, and they spent a lot of money on advertising. But apparently, this was just a niche that the audience that they were marketing to just didn't seem to feel the need to fill. So, Troy, what do you think about this?
I was really interested in the conceptual format of this app. I thought it was actually interesting because the article says the company hoped its unconventional approach, star-packed programming released in 10-minute or less episodes, would find a sweet spot in a streaming landscape crowded by the typical streaming sites. And that it seems that because usually if you can find a niche, you can usually do at least okay for yourself, right? Maybe not to the level of Netflix per se, but if I had read this when how do you pronounce it? Quibi? If I had read this when Quibi was first being launched, I would have been like, oh, that's kind of interesting. Maybe they'll actually survive the harsh landscape that is streaming services. However, it appears that is not so. And I think what my opinion would be is it looks like the 10-minute or less episode thing is interesting. However, they didn't have a lot of big name shows. They had a lot of big name stars, apparently. Like, I think they had like Chris Hemsworth in something. I don't know. But they didn't have a lot of these streaming services will be like, this is the only place to watch like this show anymore, right? Like The Office or Brooklyn Nine-Nine, or I don't know what any of the like current ones are that have moved streaming services, but that's part of the draw where there's devoted fan bases to the shows, right? You don't really have any devoted fan bases to the streaming services, except for like maybe Disney Plus, but that's because they're all Disney fans, right? People are fans of the shows, not the services.
Yeah, so I don't know about you, but personally, just saying, oh, we have stars, like really popular people in these episodes, that wasn't necessarily a huge draw for me, because like you said, we're subscribers. People tend to like the show, and none of the shows were, very popular, and none of them really seemed to pique interest. The ones that were advertised on YouTube seemed strange, at least, and not necessarily interesting to watch. On top of that, they didn't I didn't think that it was very competitive for them to be essentially charging the same as I think Hulu is around their same price point. But they don't have, like you said, anything exclusive. Like they didn't have anything that already had an audience that was going to then be exclusive to the platform.
Yeah, and if I'm being honest, Quibi honestly just kind of sounds like paid YouTube to me, because they have like stars and it's like 10-minute or less episodes, right? Not very serialized, not really any like shows, right? And that sounds a lot like YouTube, and you might say, well, Quibi is actually producing these things, right? They have backing from like directors and actors, and they have like better like production quality. But there's a lot of YouTube channels out there that have worked really hard to really up their production quality. Like something like Good Mythical Morning seems like something that would maybe be on Quibi, but you can get for free on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
And like they have the
Yeah, I can
same
totally
type of
see that.
following as like Chris Hemsworth, right? And they're much more established, and they have extremely high quality in their videos.
Yeah, and it's free on YouTube.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that was interesting. I can't say I was surprised to hear that they were finally shutting down. I think I looked up their platform maybe once in all of their months of advertising to me, because I'm a pretty avid watcher of YouTube, and it never really piqued my interest. So
Yeah, I never
can't
looked
say
into it.
yeah, can't say I'm surprised there.
And now I never will.
All right. Well, next up today, PayPal announced, this is according to a story from Reuters, that they are going to start to allow cryptocurrency buying, selling, and shopping now on PayPal. This was interesting, and as was noted in the story, like PayPal was actually a founding member of Libra, which was Facebook's cryptocurrency that they tried to start back in 2019. I think that project is still going, but if I remember correctly, they ran into some legal issues with that, and so PayPal did end up dropping out of that. So now it looks like PayPal has moved from trying to start their own cryptocurrency to, just supporting some more of the run-of-the-mill cryptocurrencies that you hear about more frequently.
Yeah, and one thing that I thought was interesting of this article, and I'll need some more information on you, our resident cryptocurrency expert. I found it interesting where cryptocurrency payments on PayPal will be settled using fiat currencies such as the US dollar, meaning merchants will not receive payments in virtual coins, the company said. And I'm interested because PayPal uses people's Bitcoins per se, right? And then they pay the company that the customer is paying in US dollars. Does that mean PayPal now owns that cryptocurrency, or did they have to trade it in to get the dollar? Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so that's a good question. I'm not sure that it specifically says, but my guess is, well, I guess based on what it's saying, it doesn't sound like they're specifically stating that they're going to try and be actually trading away the cryptocurrency right away. So they could end up holding it. And my guess is they're going to have a sort of stash of, X dollar amount of cryptocurrency just that they can control just to speed things up. They're probably going to just try and keep a certain amount of value in crypto.
Because
yeah, that's a good question.
It brings up the interesting point of cryptocurrencies. Their real value fluctuates a lot more than regular currency, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yeah.
if PayPal is essentially gathering all this cryptocurrency from people and holding on to it, could there end up being people in PayPal that are kind of playing the stocks, as it were, in terms of all this cryptocurrency they're having? The value of that all that cryptocurrency they're holding is going to fluctuate a lot, and that would be interesting to see how they handle that, and if anything under the table comes out of that, maybe.
Ooh, insider trading? Is that what you're asking?
You said it, not me, but that's just my hot take for today.
Okay. That's a good question. Let me just pull up some stats here for the past history of Bitcoin. So it looks like we're sitting at a $240 billion market cap right now. If you're asking whether PayPal. Let's see. How much is PayPal worth? Let's see. We're looking at a market cap of, oh my goodness, that's an astonishing coincidence. The market cap for PayPal Holdings as of right now is almost the same as the Bitcoin market cap. $238 billion for PayPal and $240 billion for Bitcoin. But my guess is that there won't quite be enough held by PayPal specifically to make too much of a dent in the market. By now, I think that even the fact that, okay, PayPal is going to start allowing cryptocurrency payments, that'll probably affect the prices a little bit, but I'm not sure that, because at this point, even if you use something like Webull or Robinhood, which are these, kind of very consumer-oriented stock trading apps, they support cryptocurrencies. So I don't think that, PayPal is definitely going to be a little bit even closer to the average consumer than, someone who wants to just trade stocks on the side for fun with something like Robinhood. But I'm not sure that that's going to make that much of a difference, if that's what you were asking.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, mostly just the company has a lot of, like, the company itself could be playing the changing currency prices with all this cryptocurrency they're holding is kind of what I was getting at. But I think on a completely different vector, this is in my opinion, a very forward-thinking move for PayPal, and I think it will lend a lot of credibility to cryptocurrency. Cryptocurrency has been very strange to me. It's been a very slow burn as far as technology goes. It's taken people like a long time to pick it up, and it still isn't like super. Like, it's a large market, as the statistics you just cited say, but the general public has really yet to pick up on it, to use it. But maybe that will start to change a bit faster now.
Yeah, that's possible. Crypto is definitely becoming more and more mainstream every day. Like, just the longer the name's been out there, the more comfortable people are going to be with it. So yeah, I think this is a good move, because I don't know. I don't think that cryptocurrency is a scam. So I have experience with working with the technologies, and I think it's good to see a new. Is it even fair to call cryptocurrency new anymore? It's been around for a decade.
Yeah.
So this new 10-year-old technology and fintech still making its way ever closer to the average consumer with PayPal. It's pretty forward thinking. Yeah, I'm happy about that.
I thought you would be.
All right. Well, speaking of Robinhood, that stock trading app, it was actually hacked just over a week ago. This was announced on the New York Post. Again, links as always to these stories that we're referring to are in the show notes for each episode, so you can check that and follow along if you're interested. But yeah, hackers were reported to have accessed around 2,000 Robinhood accounts. This was due to not actually a breach of the Robinhood systems, but hacked email addresses instead. So this could have been prevented with two-factor authentication, probably. But it says in the article, some of the people who were hacked were even using this two-factor authentication. So that's pretty interesting to me. What did you think about that, Troy?
Yeah, it's because a lot of people are like, oh, two-factor authentication, like it's, almost foolproof, right? Which in theory is, because it adds another vector of identification, right? It's something and something you have. It's interesting because number one, I'm interested in how they got the email accounts, whether it was through some website that has a bunch of accounts that they hacked into, or if it was a lot of like phishing scams or social engineering or what have you. And then secondly, I wonder how the two-factor authentication for Robinhood actually works. I don't use Robinhood at all, but I don't know if it might use email in some way or if probably not. But if it probably goes through their phone, if you have access to their email, well, probably wouldn't give you that much access. I don't know. I think there's a lot left to be discovered here, on both sides. And so it seems pretty, on the surface, it seems pretty unlikely that just given the email accounts, hackers would be able to get past the two-factor authentication or authentication. Yeah.
I have Robinhood on my phone. I use it a little bit every once in a while just to keep on top of the markets. I have a little bit of money in there, but it's mostly to play around. And I do have two-factor authentication enabled, and I just checked, and it does not use email the way that I have it set up. So that's kind of interesting to me that they could still access it using just access to their email accounts. So the fact that there's 2,000 accounts accessed in the same hack kind of implies something must have been misconfigured somehow.
What form does the two-factor authentication take?
So I'm using an app-based two-factor authentication. So like you scan a code and then a separate app on your phone will give you a 6-digit code, and then you just type that in. So instead of it being like, oh, they'll text you a code or something like that, it's where it's kind of a time based, like they'll keep generating different codes.
Gotcha.
So,
and it could have been,
and that's pretty standard. Like different apps like GitHub two-factor authentication is a similar setup. So like you'll use an app like Authy or a Google Authenticator or something like that, and they will be able to manage those codes for you. So that's a standard two-factor authentication setup. And then as far as how these email accounts could have been hacked in the first place, it's probably not pleasing for you to hear that hacking emails is not necessarily the hardest job in the world. So hacks, just like database dumps of essentially of like just email addresses that are linked to certain passwords are relatively frequently posted. And you can actually access these databases yourself if you go to a website like Have I Been Owned, except it's with a P, so like haveibeenpwned.com. I think it's .com. And then you can like check and see if your email addresses or any of the email addresses that you control have appeared in any of these listings. But these are more or less public databases of different hacks where email addresses are linked to passwords. And so it's just a matter of time before someone, uses the same password to log into a website that has been hacked as they used to log into their actual email account,
Yeah.
So if you reuse passwords and then all of a sudden one of these sites where you reuse your password has been hacked, that password's been made public. Well, now all it takes is for one lucky hacker to say, oh, look, I have this list of all these email addresses that are linked to all these passwords. Why don't I try all of these, email password combinations on this other website? Like, for example, Robinhood. Maybe, some dumb Flash game or, some no-name website that you signed up to a couple years ago, reused your password to. Maybe that finally got
You're saying they hacked into my
this...
FunBrain account?
Oh, no. my mini clip account. Oh no. But if you use the same password to some, website that got hacked as you used to maybe log into your Robinhood account, that is a very, I think that's a pretty obvious way for this hack to have occurred.
Yeah, big takeaway here.
If you say that in the article, but
yeah, big takeaway. If you have an account that manages your money, use a new password. It's very important.
Yeah.
I wonder.
I highly recommend it.
I wonder if
a password manager.
Yeah, I wonder if the hacker might have been able to get around the two-factor authentication by logging in. I think backdoor would be the wrong term to use, but not going through the app, right? Like the two-factor authentication might just be for users who are logging in through the app, but if he is able to gain access to the lower level API of Robinhood, right? Maybe the two-factor authentication doesn't go down that far and you just need your regular login information, right? That's the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I would think that I'm actually not sure if Robinhood provides an API, or a public API at least, because, yeah, it doesn't look like it. If I just do a quick Google search for Robinhood API, it's there are unofficial APIs, and the second link is the unofficial documentation to Robinhood's private API. So it doesn't look like they intentionally have a public API. And typically, for, I think even apps like Instagram do this, where obviously I think it's significantly less consequential for someone to have their Instagram account hacked than maybe their stock trading account, but depends on the person. Maybe you're a social media mogul or something like that. But typically, even for something like Instagram, there will be API authentication keys that can actually change within update versions, and this is to intentionally make it very difficult for third-party usage of this private API to continue to work. So every new update of Instagram or something like that, they'll actually change whatever this key is, so that any third party trying to use their API would then have to scrounge around within the updated app and try and find the new API key.
Yeah.
That's a method. That is a method that could occur. I don't know how Instagram specifically does it, but something like that.
There's many ways to skin an app.
So, yeah, that's one way to put it. Personally, I would be surprised if Robinhood didn't somehow protect their private API beyond just login credentials. If you have two-factor authentication enabled, that would surprise me, and that. I would be very concerned if that were actually the case. I didn't see that in the article though, but you never know.
Yeah, certainly an interesting thing to keep up on, speculate on.
Yep, definitely. All right. Well, next up we have this story from the BBC talking about a French contact tracing app for COVID-19. Obviously, everyone is stressed, or at least extremely frustrated about how long this pandemic has gone on. And so contact tracing and contact tracing applications have been one proposed method to, help governments get more of a handle on this thing. But it sounds like they were having a couple issues with their contact tracing app over in France that they announced. They looked like their website was down for a bit, but they claim to have fixed that. But in general, I think there are concerns about government-controlled contact tracing apps, which if you ask me, that sounds like the perfect excuse for a government to get a lot of information about their citizens, you know, in exchange, like they're kind of trading their privacy for security. And, that kind of raises a couple red flags in my head. I don't know about you, Troy, but, government sponsored contact tracing just kind of sounds like an excuse to gather a lot of information about the average person.
Yeah. I think first off, I'm going to start with what the article mostly focuses on, which is the problems that the app had, because I think the app had trouble like launching, like activating, missing text, being stuck on its homepage, and the government claimed that it was basically a server issue, right? Caused by a flood of too many people using the system at once. Which things like missing text, being stuck on its homepage, yeah, maybe, but being able to like launch the app, that seems a bit. Either number one, this app is very, very poorly designed and cannot actually launch without first connecting to the server, or B, they're not being entirely honest about what the actual problem is, which piqued my interest. Now, as far as the security issues, yeah, this is, I think, one of the great themes of this year, this pandemic, is trading ideals, I suppose I'll put it, right? Trading personal freedom for public health, right? Trading personal privacy for I guess you could also say public health. It's a lot of how much do we expect people to give in order to help manage the pandemic, right? And it's been widely and profusely talked about, all these different facets of how much do we compromise, right? Do we, in terms of like economic health and personal privacy and personal freedom and everything else. And I think it's interesting because the French officials said that they're planning to add a QR scanning system for restaurants and other venues to help keep like a contact tracing record. So I'm wondering what they're doing right now, if they're just like tracking a GPS location of people, or if people are required to like say like I'm checking in here, right? I'm just kind of wondering to what extent is it tracking them, right? Is it user provided information on where they go and it's totally voluntary, or is it put this app on your phone and we'll track your GPS location, right?
Yeah, that's a good question. I liked your point there about how much is it necessary to give, especially because now that we have community spread, is contact tracing even going to be effective unless you have like a critical mass of the population on board with it, which then also, like you said, QR system for restaurants and other venues. What information are they collecting right now? They did say that this is effectively a rebrand of their previous and unpopular Stop COVID app. So that's interesting that they're still having issues, even though they're trying to like relaunch this app and then it just crashes. But as for what information that they're actually collecting, doesn't say specifically in this article so far as I could see. But I know on my phone I have an app that kind of alerts me about local news stories or local like emergency response, I guess is more correct way of putting it. And they have a contact tracing option, which I have disabled because I don't want that information being sent over and probably to the government. But I think the way that it works on this specific app that I have on my phone, and I don't know if it works the same way for the French one, but it kind of tracks your location. It will track whether you're in close quarters with another person who also has this app downloaded and this feature enabled, and then it will alert you if you've been near them. I've heard that other apps also have been using, I think, Bluetooth. So like if they detect certain Bluetooth signals that are known to use the contact tracing app or something like that. I don't personally have experience with those, but that can.
I would be much more concerned about that because,
well, I mean, usually if you have Bluetooth enabled, you can. That there have actually been some really interesting studies, not necessarily just studies, but experiments that have been done with like tracking Bluetooth signals. Like I recall, now this is just something I'm remembering right now. Now, at I think it was DEF CON one of these years, a couple of security researchers had like a robot or something that was going around and just detecting what Bluetooth signals were in the area. And you can actually track people's locations with that if you have Bluetooth turned on your phone. So if you're, you just have your phone, your Bluetooth on your phone, and it's connected to maybe your smartwatch or something like that, obviously other devices in the area can see that Bluetooth signal and track it. So
yeah,
obviously with the contact tracing, they're specifically trying to trace this thing, but Bluetooth signals are a traceable piece of information.
Yeah, and so I wouldn't want to. For me, having your Bluetooth on in public makes your phone very vulnerable to hackers because it's a very like vulnerable part of your phone because like you can pick up that there's a Bluetooth signal like anywhere and it's a connection protocol to your phone, right? And so having to have that on constantly for this app to like work or like work better, I personally probably wouldn't be comfortable with, just because like, so quick security tip: if you go out in public, make sure your Bluetooth is off. Only have your Bluetooth on if you're actually using it.
Yeah, that's, and also like location services on your phone, if you're not using them, probably turn them off. Good advice, definitely. But yeah, I'm wondering, once this pandemic comes to an end, if this pandemic comes to an end, I am interested to see what the response from governments and the general population and the media is going to be to the cessation of the use of contact tracing applications. Because if what I know about power-hungry individuals stays true, there's going to be at least some faction somewhere that is pressing for, these services, we found them useful for the COVID-19 pandemic, so why not just keep using them? Which would be the very excuse that a government wanting to invade its citizens' privacy more and more, that's the exact excuse they're going to want to be looking for. So I'm concerned about that.
Yeah, I suppose. I think there's a couple things that will help combat that. Number one, they don't seem to be super popular. Number two, I'm guessing most people will immediately remove it from their phones as soon as they can, right? As soon as we start to see whatever light is at the end of this tunnel. And number two, once we get there and people's mental capacities are kind of freed from thinking about COVID, people are going to start thinking about these repercussions. And if the government tries to, I don't know, keep using this, then you know, I am sure that there would be lawsuits to follow if they tried to keep using these services without the user's express consent. So,
Yeah. Well, we'll just have to see how this one plays out, and I certainly hope that the average user is privacy conscious enough to realize that at some point, okay, the pandemic is well nigh over, and I should remove this from my phone. I hope the average user is privacy conscious enough to do that, but frankly, I'm not optimistic.
Yeah. Save that phone.
All right.
Save that phone space for more apps, for music.
Yes, more apps, more music.
That's what I do.
There we go. All right. Next up, kind of a quick, interesting, kind of fun story from Ars Technica, where some McDonald's fanatic, I guess, some hero, wrote a bot to continually order ice cream from every single McDonald's, apparently, in order to determine whether their ice cream machine was broken. Which, McDonald's is notorious for
genius
having their ice cream machine always being out of commission. So having this bot, just that's a pretty clever way to determine whether their ice cream machine is broken. Is just, actually try and convince McDonald's or the McDonald's ordering API that you are a person trying to order an ice cream sundae, and then they'll just tell you, no, it's broken or something like that.
Well, so apparently it sounds like
I thought that was pretty clever.
Yeah, it sounds like it's got a nice UI. It's got a map with colored dots based on if the ice cream machine is working or not. This whoever this person is, they're fighting the good fight for us normal folk. And it's interesting that the two interesting points I got from the article, just real quick, were number one, we now have better statistics about how many ice cream machines are broken and where, right? Because apparently just under 10% of McDonald's ice cream machines are broken across the United States at any given time. But apparently those percentages are much higher in places like New York City, where it's 24%, or Seattle, where it's 20%, which is just interesting. Who knows why? Also, I'm curious as to how accurate this guy did some tests in, I think, Germany to see if I think it was Germany to see if his method actually worked, and apparently it did. But I'm curious as to how the McDonald's app actually gets updated to the fact of whether or not the ice cream machine is broken, if the employees have to send something to central distribution, and then the app gets updated, which is, it sounds unreliable, but I mean, if they're really on top of it for the app, then I suppose.
I don't know. I guess it's probably the most reliable information that you can get. I worked in a fast food restaurant a couple of years ago before I went to college even. It wasn't McDonald's, but I mean, I don't see any way other than the employees actually having to okay, take an order and, oh no, we can't make this one because the ice cream machine is broken. I don't see any way other than that to actually detect whether the ice cream machine is actually broken, other than, I suppose, actually connecting the ice cream machine to the internet somehow.
Of Things.
Which I think has more problems potential problems than actual benefits. If you ask me, having a internet connected ice cream machine, I can only see this ending badly, to be perfectly honest. Someone hacks the ice cream machine and, well, Now the McDonald's is literally full of ice cream.
Okay,
or
so maybe
something
not
like
for
that, something that was
McDonald's, but
crazy.
who's going to be the hero who makes an Internet of Things ice cream machine for my house so I can just click a button on my phone and I come back home to a perfect ice cream sundae? That's what I
You
want.
know what? That is, I think that is the next big thing.
Any of you
You should do
entrepreneurs
that.
out
You should
there, get on that. I will buy it.
Yes, please.
Give me a discount. 15%
funny
royalties.
I actually am looking at McBroken.com right now, which is the website the guy set up, and the closest McDonald's to me right now is out of commission.
Oh no.
The
Sad.
ice cream machine is broken. So, sadness. Except I don't go to McDonald's very often, so not quite as sad. But yeah, that is the McBroken story for you today. And the last thing we have on the list to talk about today is a lawsuit against Google. Looks like it's on the order of $5 billion for continuing to track users even in incognito mode. Now, this one was interesting for me to read because, Google has kind of, Google has their browser, the Google Chrome browser, and they also have their search engine, the Google search engine. And those are actually separate products, which a lot of people actually don't necessarily understand the difference between a search engine and a web browser, which means that I guess it's understandable kind of to me that some people would be confused about like, okay, I'm in incognito mode and then I go to Google, but think that Google is the same thing as their web browser. I know a number of people who have issues determining the difference between a web browser and a search engine, so I can understand where they're coming from.
Yeah.
But I guess as the tech actually works, I kind of see myself coming down on Google's side on this one.
Oh, yeah.
Because they're separate products. Their Chrome browser and their Google search engine. And incognito mode only applies to the Chrome browser. So
yeah,
the fact that they're tracking their users still on the Google search engine, they might be taking advantage of the fact that a lot of people don't understand the difference between a browser and a search engine. But at that point, I think it's probably more on the user's lack of understanding of how things work than Google.
Yeah. For those listening who won't go read the article, this is about a $5 billion proposed class action lawsuit against Google for apparently tracking people's use of its Chrome browser even when they are in incognito mode. Is the very surface level summary of it. And yeah, I think I come down on Google's side for it because basically all Google promises with their incognito mode is we will not record your like it will not record your browsing history, right? Which is surprisingly a very small amount of the actual data you generate when you're browsing the internet.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. I think it's easy for people to see something like an incognito browser and they're like, oh, this is like secure. Nobody will know anything I'm doing on the internet. This is great. And it's like, no, you'd have to go to a lot more trouble in order to be actually anonymous, right? Onion routers and everything else. So,
yeah, it's a matter of, I think, knowledge about actually what's going on behind the scenes or a lack of knowledge that is made evident in this case. So, yeah, that'll be interesting to see if that one goes anywhere. But that's all that we had to talk about today. I hope that you enjoyed listening to this episode of the Compulang podcast. I know I, for one, always enjoy recording these episodes, and I hope that we will see you back here next week for the next episode of Compulang. Thank you so much for listening, and have a great day.